My very first conversation with the Prime Minister was to tell him we were aligning with a 2050 target like our allies, and that I would produce an emissions reduction and energy development plan, which I did last April. And we've been working on a number of tables for how we will work on achieving some of those interim steps.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much. Ms. Goodridge, please, for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Premier for taking your time here today to stand up for Albertans. We've seen now the country, Germany, Japan, and most recently Greece come asking the Prime Minister about LNG, and unfortunately his answer every single time seems to be there's no business case. I don't think he's correct. Can you give a bit of a snapshot as to what LNG would mean for our province?
I can tell you what it would mean for our country, what it would mean for our partner, British Columbia, as well, what it would mean for First Nations who are increasingly developing LNG export facilities. We've been very supportive of our Indigenous communities being able to develop resources, take an equity stake, and be able to generate income. So, for instance, we have a $3 billion Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation. I see that British Columbia has also established a $1 billion loan guarantee to allow nations to buy equity stakes in a variety of different projects. So, for instance, there's a 900 megawatt Cascades power plant that is Indigenous owned. We've got pipeline networks that are Indigenous owned. And so I'm very much looking forward to seeing the impact that will have. It's going to deliver $1.2 billion worth of revenue to our nations in Alberta. And I would encourage every province to do the same, as well as the national government to do the same. The value of natural gas right now is very low. It's $1.72 per gigajoule, as I was mentioning, but it becomes the base fuel for so many products that can be used in the transition. LNG and ammonia are the most stable ways to transport the hydrogen molecule. And so being able to do both of those, I think, opens up new markets as well as reduces emissions. We developed our Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program, where we give a 12% rebate for anyone who uses natural gas as a feedstock fuel. It's part of the reason why Dow Chemical and Air Products have located in our industrial heartland. I should also mention that when we have done a survey of our pore space, we have the best pore space in the world for carbon capture, utilization, and storage, second only to Russia. And that is part of the reason, because we have an at-scale project that was done by Shell Quest, and we have an at-scale project for the carbon trunk line. We're immediately able to capture those CO2 emissions. The pore space we have, I'm told by my officials, is so large it could theoretically capture all of the emissions already produced by man so far. So we are very keen to make sure that natural gas, in the spirit of COP28, remains that transition fuel. So not only we can help ourselves, our Indigenous partners, the Canadian economy, but also our international partners.
Thank you for that, Premier. So speaking of natural gas, we did see this winter a carve out for Atlantic Canadians on their home heating, but not for natural gas, which is how most of us here in Alberta heat their homes. Do you think that's fair?
Not fair at all. In fact, when you look at how it's December, January, February, and March that we have the greatest need for natural gas. I noticed there's members on the committee from Ontario. Ontario also relies on natural gas principally for home heating. And most people would have been able to enjoy a break during this winter because natural gas is trading so low. But when you layer on a carbon tax that is twice the amount that people are paying for their base fuel, and it's itemized on our home heating bills, we see it, we feel it, especially since we know that home heating oil is about 1.25 times more intensive on CO2 emissions. To see that anyone who is using home heating oil with a higher emissions profile is able to get a 3-year break while we're suffering through the minus 35-degree winters that we often have, it's absolutely not fair. And I do think it is the obligation of the members of Parliament to ensure that fairness in application of federal policy applies to all products in all regions for all types of uses, and that's not happening.
Yeah, I know it's truly unfortunate how asymmetrical the approach from the federal government has been on so many of these issues. The solution that the Prime Minister and his eco-activist minister brought forward were heat pumps, and as you know, I'm in Fort McMurray. Heat pumps don't work super well in minus 50. In fact, they don't really work in minus 20. Do you think heat pumps are a good solution for northern Alberta winters?
They may work in some jurisdictions, but I can tell you in Alberta, my understanding is our insurance companies will not insure a home that only has a heat pump. It needs to have a secondary backup because, as you described, in most places of the province, it will routinely get below minus 30. If pipes freeze, that causes a major insurance wreck. And so they're just not practical in the extremely cold climate that we have in Alberta.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your strong advocacy.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kusmirchuk, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Premier, for being here with us today and having this important conversation. Affordability is absolutely at the center of everything that our federal government is doing, and I appreciate that you are part of that work. I wanted to set the record straight right off the bat. The oil to heat pump affordability program is not just available to communities in the Atlantic provinces. That is a program that is available across Canada from coast to coast to coast across all communities. And as you rightfully pointed out, Premier, home heating oil is often the most expensive, but also the most polluting type of oil. And so, again, our federal government has extended that program to all communities across Canada, including in Alberta and including in my home province of Ontario. Premier, I also wanted to highlight the fact that, again, I appreciate how the chair has unilaterally called these meetings and invited yourself and others to testify here because it is such an important meeting. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that it is interesting to me that out of the permanent Conservative members of this OGO committee, none have showed up other than the chair to ask questions of the Premier of Alberta, Premier of Saskatchewan, even though 3 of those permanent members are from Alberta and Saskatchewan. I wanted to highlight the irony of that as well, too, and it is unfortunate. But nonetheless, those that are here are really keen on talking about affordability and about climate change, which are top priorities for this government. Premier, I am very concerned about the fact that you're here to talk about and raise your concerns about the carbon pricing, which will add 3 cents per liter on gas on April 1st. And yet at the same time on April 1st, Premier, you are raising the gas tax in your home province to 13 cents, increasing it by 4 cents. I understand you were at an Axe the Tax rally yesterday, I believe, with the leader of the opposition. Can you clarify for me whether you were protesting? Was it a rally to axe your tax on the gas tax, which is adding 4 cents to a liter? If you can just clarify that for me. If you were at a rally to axe the tax that you are increasing in your province by 4 cents.
Sure, happy to answer that. I should let you know that there are 12,000 Albertans that have home heating oil of our nearly 5 million population. So I think just by those numbers, you can see that your program does not apply equally across the country. I would say as well that as I mentioned, we have had $7 billion worth of foregone revenues because we've been trying to compensate for the inflation crisis at the federal level. In fact, we
Premier,
sorry,
I don't mean to obtrude. My time is limited here, but are you speaking out against your government's 4-cent increase on the gas tax on April 1st? I'm just curious. And will the government listen to your concerns?
Well, the federal government charges 35 cents in gasoline taxes. We charge 13 cents. Our 13 cents goes to build roads. If your environment minister would let you build roads, maybe some of yours would go to build roads as well.
We do. Thousands of them every year. We do.
Well, he certainly doesn't seem to want to anymore.
Yes.
And the 17 cents, as we know, will not go to build roads.
Premier, I appreciate you're not wanting to answer my question on that very sensitive